Hello everyone, my name is Matthew Kilgore. In the past, I've given two different talks on voting reform. One of them was on single winner methods, think stuff like instant runoff voting and approval voting. The other one was on proportional representation. Today, I'm going to be talking about three other reforms in a similar vein. However, these reforms go a bit deeper in that they fundamentally change what our votes mean, and in one case, they get rid of votes entirely. These are a family of reforms that I call direct democracy approximators. Now, let me give a quick disclaimer. That is my term. If you try to search the literature for it, you're gonna find nothing. When I say this, all I mean is that these methods attempt to make it so that the final outcome of any policy vote from any hypothetical elected organization or legislature will, as closely as possible, reflect the idea of direct democracy, which is to say that hypothetical universe where we were somehow able to get all of the citizenry to come together and discuss in a deliberative manner the topic at hand, and then somehow come to a conclusion. Now, like I said, there were three different systems that I wanted to look at today, and the first one is something called direct representation. Now, direct representation is a fairly simple modification to our current system, which is to say that when we are voting for any type of office, you still make a single mark ballot and vote for one single person. The difference is that after you cast your vote and everything is tallied up, all of the candidates who received any amount of vote get elected, and once elected, they have a vote of weight equal or proportional to the number of votes they received. However, I hope you can see the key thrust of this system, which is to say that you are no longer voting for a representative. What you are voting for is a delegate. This delegate casts your vote on your behalf for every single policy matter on which they are able to vote for. As such, this method is still having what effectively amounts to a general referendum on any single bill or, again, policy matter. Boy, I keep saying that word a lot, but it's necessary. In many ways, direct representation is somewhat the natural limit, or rather the ultimate form of proportional representation. It's what happens when every single candidate is their own party, or whatever other metric for proportionality is being used, and the number of seats goes to infinity. The end result is going to be the same. Hopefully, it's very obvious that this system has a number of desirable properties, most of which come down to the fact that every single vote counts. No matter who you vote for, no matter where you are, your vote shows up in the total. So this allows minority representation. It ensures that we have no wasted ballots, and it also conveniently dodges the issue of gerrymandering because it renders concepts such as packing and cracking to be meaningless. However, it's also got a number of, shall we say, feasibility issues. Most of this revolves around the fact that if every candidate gets elected, we have no idea beforehand how large a legislature may be. Take the US, for example. We have 435 districts, and it's very possible that each of those may elect up to 6 candidates. In fact, it might trend upwards of that. The end result would be that we'd have over 2,400 people in our legislature, which is pretty massive. Some variants of direct representation do away with districts entirely. That might help the number, but it still may be very large and unwieldy. It also has the major drawback of never having been tested. Because of this uncertainty, I've been unable to find any organization, governmental or otherwise, that actually uses direct representation. So I know what you're wondering right about now. If direct representation is such an untested scheme, why don't we consider what happens if we take it to its logical extreme? That sounds like a good idea, right? But actually, a lot of people seem to think, yes, it is. In particular, what we're going to be taking to the extreme is that proxy interpretation of direct representation. The idea that you are voting for everything just via a delegate or a proxy. What we're going to do is we're going to get rid of candidates, we're going to get rid of elections, and we're just going to make everything proxy votes. So whenever a bill or anything comes up for consideration, you can vote on it on your own, or you can instead say, I trust person X, I'm gonna let them vote on my behalf. And then person X may in turn say, yeah, I don't really know this either, I'm gonna trust it to person Y, and so on and so forth. Proxies become transferable and composable. This scheme is called liquid democracy. The general opinion or argument for liquid democracy is that it's somewhat more fine-grained and responsive than direct representation. You're not stuck with the same proxy for however long it's going to be between elections. Now, if you're adult like me, which I assume to some degree, since we're all academics here, your first thought was probably something along the lines of, Oh my god, that sounds like a logistical nightmare. The system would involve what would amount to a perpetual counting of votes, or more specifically, a perpetual tracking of proxies. Moreover, the system would have to deal with matters such as cycle resolution. After all, it's entirely possible that we may end up with a cycle of delegations, although it's probably not going to be common. On top of that, given the perpetual nature of the system, any counting would have to resolve in real time. There would be no real way to have everything wait 2 or 3 weeks for an audit or anything. And that is to say nothing of the issues regarding secret ballots. I think we all agree that public accountability is a pretty important part in any setup of a democratic system, and as such, just about every proxy would have to have their vote recorded. But of course, anyone can be a proxy, and more importantly, anyone can be made a proxy. As such, there isn't really a secret ballot anymore. These are all difficult problems to deal with, and let's be honest, we don't really have a good solution to them for regular elections. So then, if liquid democracy is such an intractable scheme, then why am I talking about it? Well, because it's actually already in use. It's been used internally by a number of different political parties and organizations. It's particularly popular, it seems, with the various European pirate parties. But even beyond that, there are just a number of e-voting applications and such that implement it. Are these implementations that secure and ready for actual government use? No, probably not. But compared to direct representation, we already have some idea of whether or not it can be used. Alright, so that's two systems out of the way. Both of them have fundamentally centered on everyone being able to vote on everything, at least indirectly. But what if we're going about this the wrong way? Let's look at it from a more rigorous scientific position. Fundamentally, what we're trying to do is, I guess it could be viewed as a bit of a big data problem. We have way too many voters to count, and we need a way to get results quickly and reasonably and rapidly. So, how do we do that? I'm sorry, being serious, we use statistics. If we have too much data to go through, we know how to solve that. We take a random sample. That's right, I'm talking about citizens' assemblies. The basic idea behind one is that we take a representative random sample of the country or whatever electorate we have. Usually gather anywhere from, the number I see most frequently thrown about is 100 to 300 random people, and then have them listen to experts give testimony on the topic. They debate it, and then ultimately they vote on it. And as we know, as academically minded people, thanks to basic statistics, what they come up with is probably going to be pretty close to how the actual nation, or electorate, or whatever, would have voted if they were all able to come together. A lot of ink has been spilled trying to exactly deduce what a representative sample is. If we're only using a particular assembly for one issue, then as long as we're actually choosing at random from the electorate or whatever, we really don't need to worry about much else. However, most schemes like to reuse assemblies to some extent. As such, it's generally recommended that any sampling will have to go through some type of stratification or whatever to make sure that it's also demographically representative. Oh my god, I've been recording blind for almost 20 minutes. I am so sorry. Regardless of which setup you use, the thing about citizens' assemblies is that they are very well tested, or at least much more so than either open democracy or direct representation. There is a whole slew of past citizens' assemblies used by actual governments, some in advisory capacities, others more officially. I think most prominently and famously, Ireland has used them to great effect. They've tackled a number of rather controversial issues via citizens' assemblies, such as, among other things, abortion. And somehow these assemblies did not devolve into screaming matches. Turns out when you have a fairly limited number of people and have them listen to experts, they're usually able to come to a consensus. So citizens' assemblies seem pretty good right now. But let's talk about some of their disadvantages. Number one of which is largely psychological. A lot of people aren't comfortable with the idea of random chance playing a part in the workings of government. Moreover, there are a number of people who don't exactly like the fact that any one given citizen is likely never going to be consulted in any manner. The key issue is that while the assemblies we've done have shown promising results, there isn't really a general consensus on how to integrate them.